And here I find myself living in Europe. And so, I've been here about a year and 4 months. I still wake up shocked and just in a whole world of gratitude and amazed that I'm living this life. And it's all very new to me. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that feeling.
Welcome back to another episode of The Pod Abroad. My name is Paulina de los Santos, and I am joined here today with a very special guest. But before introducing her, a little bit about myself. I am an American who has lived in Munich, Germany for the last 8 years and have every intention of staying at the moment. And that's about me. But who am I speaking with today? On the Pod Abroad, I want to be able to share stories of friends, family, and a lot of just people that I've met along the way who have made a life in another country other than their home country. And I think it's really cool that we have all these stories and experiences to share. So all that being said, today I'm here with my mother, MJ. Woo woo!
Woo woo!
A little bit about you, Mom. Take it away.
Well, my name is Mary Jane de los Santos, and I'm 61, and it's
and single
and available. And I'm very excited to tell you that I am now living in Alicante, Spain, after living in Texas all of my life. And it's just a whole new adventure for me. I'm just very excited to be exploring the world and creating my own adventures at this point in my life. I'm in a new part of a new chapter of my life. And so, therefore, that's what I'm doing here. I'm in Europe trying to discover the world and myself.
Love that. Thanks so much, Mom, for those words. I want to start from the beginning of your adventures abroad and just take it back even one step further. Can you tell me a bit about where you grew up and, where you're from?
I was born and raised in the lower part of Texas called the Rio Grande Valley, and lived there all of my life until I got married at age 20 and moved away to Houston.
20?
Yeah, I was 20 when I got married. And moved to Houston, Texas, which is about the center of Texas. And like I said, it's very exciting to leave home and discover a whole new world.
Yeah. But tell me more about where you're from. Like, where did you grow up? A little bit about that.
I grew up in a town called Weslaco, Texas, which I didn't appreciate enough until I got married and moved away, but especially now, it's a whole other level of appreciation for my hometown and the beautiful people in it. Grew up with the same group, and we're all very close, and we're about 60 years old, 61, and still in touch, and still have reunions. And I'm very excited about the atmosphere that I grew up in, but I didn't find truly an appreciation for that until later on in life. I took it for granted, but it did occur to me how fortunate I was after my children didn't get to have that upbringing where they were just in one place for a while. We were moving around, and then we found our footing, and then they got to grow up in my hometown. Full of a lot of love, and oddly enough, they got to grow up with the children of my friends. So I thought that was fabulous. I don't know about you. Did you find that
for sure.
Being unique?
Oh, for sure. And I can completely relate in you saying that maybe you didn't appreciate where you were from as much until later
on in life,
when you leave, and then you realize, oh my gosh, we were so rich there with other things than money, right?
Exactly. You had a friendship and confidence and you could truly turn to somebody and know that they'd be there to help you versus being in a big city. At first, I thought a new big city was fascinating, and it was, and adventurous. But then I realized I was out on my own and didn't have the friends that I had growing up. And that's natural. That happens to a lot of people. But later on, I got to go back to that atmosphere, which I never dreamt would be happening, and it did. And it was a blessing to rekindle friendships with beautiful friends, and for my children to meet the friends that they had heard about growing up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about your first experience abroad, leaving the U.S.?
My first experience abroad was at age 16, which was really exciting. I had an Aunt Mary Bixio, and she invited my mother and my aunt from California to go to France and to Switzerland. I was so excited. I told my friends about our trip, and I said, this summer, I'm going to go to Europe. And they're like, yeah, right. Yeah, okay. And I did, and it was an incredible experience. My aunt was a very strict aunt, so the very first thing she told me is, no blue jeans, Mary Jane. We're representing the United States of America.
I love that.
And I thought, no blue jeans, I'm Texan. But so I have to admit to you that I wore these dressy polyester pants.
Ooh.
Polyester, I'm glad nobody was smoking near me. And we dressed up every day, and we stayed in a luxurious hotel in Geneva. And it was just a whole new experience to hear all these different languages, to see all these different cultures. My mother and I would sit in the lobby of this really fancy hotel and just for hours and sit there and listen to everybody as they talked different languages and walked by. And I thought, one day I would love to return to Europe. Hopefully one day I'll be in Europe. And here I find myself living in Europe. And so, yeah, I've been here about a year and 4 months. I still wake up shocked and just in a whole world of gratitude and amazed that I'm living this life. And it's all very new to me. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get over that feeling. I've talked to you about this before, and I've asked you, I said, is that silly that I wake up some days and I'm like, I'm really here. This isn't a dream. And so it's exciting. Yeah, it's like a gift within a gift.
Yeah. So what year was that the first time you went, more or less?
It was in, I believe it was in 79, 1979.
And then when was your next experience abroad after?
The next time I got to come to Europe was in the year 2002 with a friend of mine and Jane and her 2 children. And we went to Amsterdam and we went to Nigeria.
Wow.
And I've heard from a lot of people, why would you go to Nigeria? Because the trip was offered to me and flights were paid.
Why not?
And it was an opportunity to come back to Europe. And that was very exciting. I got to...
And Africa.
In Africa. And I got to play with the children in the streets and play soccer with them. And that's not easy on me because I have limitations due to arthritis. And so it was very exciting. And although it drove Jane nuts and she was terrified, I was like, no, I'm going to get out there and play. And so it was a great experience. And one day I would love to go back.
To Nigeria.
Well, I'd love to go to Nigeria, but I'd like to go to different parts of Africa.
Yeah. So then what brought you, so you said you've been here now a little over 1 year in Spain, and you're a 61-year-old woman from Texas. Mm-hmm. Tell me about how that happened. How is it that you've been living in Spain 1 year, legalities, the thought? Maybe like we backtrack and you just tell me the story kind of.
Well, I had reconnected with a friend who lived in London, and she has a home health care business and wanted me to come help her. And so as you know, although I'm a grown woman, I like to check with my kids and see, what are your feelings about this, or what's your opinion on that? And I ask the kids, I've been offered an opportunity to move to London and help Pere with her business. And I'm not sure if that's really what I want to do, because my dream is Spain. What do you think? And I was concerned, out of the 3 kids, that you were going to say, no, are you nuts? The weather's horrible. I knew the weather was horrible. I knew that it was going to rain and be cold, but I also knew that I was one step closer to Spain. And I don't want to say no to an adventure. You should always try to keep your mind open and stay positive, because therefore more doors will open. And so I didn't want to say no to London, even though I wasn't crazy about the weather. Yes, it is more expensive to live there. So I went to London, and that wasn't for me. So I was there for about 2 weeks, and then I called up my daughter, Paulina, and I said, I need to go to Spain. I need to focus on my dream. And so that's when you found Alicante, Spain, for me, because your friend lives in Altea.
Mm-hmm.
And
which is in the south.
It's
Southwest?
on the coast.
Yeah.
On the coast. And so I went to Alicante for 5 weeks and stayed at an Airbnb. And Paulina found this place for me. And the young lady that was running the Airbnb and I became fast friends. Her name's Giovi. Lovely young lady. And so I lived there for 5 weeks, and never once did I take public transportation. I took a taxi a few times, but the reason I'm so excited about that was because you just don't do that in Texas. You have a car and you have to drive everywhere. And so in Alicante, I felt free. My health was better. My mobility was better. My heart was happier, and my soul was ready for an adventure. And so Paulina would call me and say, Mama, don't forget that the transportation is excellent in Alicante, and they have trams, and there's many different types of transportation. I said, oh no, I'm walking everywhere. And I lived in the center of the city. And so that sort of shocked her as the time went by, that I continued to walk everywhere. It was quite exciting. It was like letting my wings stretch further than they had before. And so it was a sense of freedom, a different type of adventure that I did not have in the U.S. because I drove everywhere. And so, yeah, it was a whole new life. And I lived about a 15-minute walk away from the marina. It's called the Esplanada, the boardwalk, a beautiful place, one of my favorite places in Alicante. And I would walk down to the marina and enjoy a coffee or churros and chocolate, and just get out and walk. And I really fell in love with walking, which I had never done before. I think a lot of it has to do, too, with the fact that before this experience of moving abroad, I had moved to Austin, Texas, from the bottom of Texas to Austin, Texas, our capital of Texas. And it was in 2016, and Paulina had just moved to Europe. And I fell and broke my hip.
Yeah.
And when I went to the ER, the doctors, two residents, broke my pelvic bone, and nobody would touch me in the hospital for 5 days. And finally, a doctor came along, and I prayed and prayed for the right person to come along and to help me. And a doctor came along, Dr. Kevin Bosek, and I knew he was the one. And he said, I'm going to put you back together. I really am. And I said, oh, I know you are. He said, no, I really am, MJ. Because the other 4 doctors would walk in, introduce themselves, and say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Smith, and I'll be taking care of you, Mary Jane." I said, "Okay." In about 2 hours, he'd walk in and not make eye contact and would look down and said, "Oh, there was a problem with my schedule, and Dr. So-and-so will be helping you." And this went on for 4 days. So when Dr. Bozek came and he said, "I really, really am the one that's going to be able to help you," I sensed it in my soul, and I knew that he was the one to put me together. And he gave me the opportunity to walk again, because once it was all said and done and the operation was done and I had to go through a long rehabilitation, he said, "I have to be honest with you, the other 4 doctors don't believe you're going to walk again. It's not going to be easy if you have any mobility." And I said, "Oh, I'm going to get it done." He said, "That's exactly what I told him. I read through all of your medical files, and it always said that you rehabbed quickly because you wanted to get back to your children." And he said, I know that you can do this. And I've done everything in my power to do this. And this was no ordinary doctor. This was the head of the UT School of Orthopedic Surgeons. This was the head of the entire school who operated on me. And when he spoke to me, I felt like this confidence in his voice. I felt the sincerity in what he was telling me. And I felt it in my heart and soul too, that he truly was going to give me the opportunity, but I was going to have to fight for it. And he did warn me, it isn't going to be easy. The other doctors don't think it's possible, but I have faith in you, and I know how you rehab, and we're going to get this done, and I'll be there for you. And he was, because during the rehabilitation, I could not get out of bed and stand more than 3 seconds due to an excruciating pain called sciatica, which is sciatic nerve injury. And it was troubling. I am a person who I try to live life happy and grateful and a positive attitude, and this was not me during this time. It turned me into somebody angry, somebody bitter, but you have to realize that that was part of my rehabilitation, because that anger helped me to get up and over these hurdles and obstacles I was facing. And so I couldn't stand for 3 seconds. So in my mind, due to this shooting pain that felt like electricity up my right leg, so in my mind, I was so angry, thinking, if I can't stand for 3 seconds, how am I supposed to walk? Were they right? Were these doctors correct in their medical assumptions? And then my eldest son had a talk with me, and he said, "You're going to have to decide you want to walk. You're going to have to decide that that's your goal and not just remain angry." And that was a big turning point. A big, big turning point was when Paulina came back from Europe and shocked me and surprised me with her visit. That gave me a lot of courage and strength to get up and over one of the big obstacles I was having at that moment. And that's when Paulina came to visit, and I was having trouble walking across the street. I couldn't cross the street in time for the crossing light to turn. It was going from green to red. And Paulina came to visit, and she said, "Mama, you have to try harder. You have to push yourself." And I just got so angry, and I said, "What the hell, Paulina? You know the type of person I am. You know I'm trying my best." She said, "I know, Mama, but I'm not telling you that to be mean. I'm telling you that because I have a surprise for you." you need to try harder because I'm flying you to Europe where you're going to get out and you're going to have adventures and you're going to Europe. And she said, in October. And it was July. I said, what? And she said, I'm flying you to Europe in October. And you've got to be able to walk faster. You've got to be able to cross the street in these big cities.
Not walk faster, but just distances.
Walk distances and get across the street within a certain amount of time. That's what I mean. So, yeah, I really feel that was a big, big push that was given to me with such a loving, big heart from you. And that was the beginning of my journey in Europe because COVID was happening. And
it was 2021.
Oh, in 2021.
Yeah.
And COVID was upon us. And she was going to fly me the 1st of October. And I'm dressed, suitcases packed. My younger son is ready to drive me to the airport that morning. And I get a call from my doctor's office that the COVID test is positive. I said, no, I'm walking out the door. I'm flying to Germany today. And they said, no. And back then it was against the law if you traveled with a positive result. So
I remember you saying like, oh, this was your witch doctor trying to sell Herbalife to you.
I had a doctor who was very strange, and I'd call her the witch doctor, and my kids would say, why don't you change doctors? And I said, I don't know. I'm just going to keep going to the witch doctor. And she was trying to sell me Herbalife to lose weight, but in a different office because it's against the law for her to do that. So she had us in, my older son and I, in a different area. And he looked at me and he looked around and he said, let's get the hell out of here. I said, we can't leave. I already checked in. He said, let's get out of here. So we left. And eventually I left that doctor, but I felt like her tests were, I don't know, maybe
faulty.
She got, no, I really think that she got a batch that maybe cost less or something. And it said that it was positive and I felt great. And Paulina called right at that moment and said, are you excited? And I told her the truth. I said, I'm not going. My bags are packed. We were walking out the door and the test came out positive. And she said, Mama, this isn't funny. Don't even joke like that. I said,
because you're a jokester.
I love to joke.
Because you're a jokester.
I like to play jokes on them. So I said, I'm not joking and I cannot talk anymore because I really broke down crying, and my younger son got on the phone and said, Paulina, Mom's telling you the truth. And so then Paulina said, don't leave the house. Don't you dare step out of the home. I'm booking a flight right now for 1 month from today. And that's exactly what happened. 1 month later, I was on that flight. I didn't leave the home for a month.
That was your first time.
We're very careful, and that was the first time that I came.
In Germany.
Mm-hmm. That was my first trip to Germany. Just very excited.
What were your first impressions here in Germany?
Very clean.
In Munich.
Yeah.
We have to say, Munich, Germany.
Yeah, it was very clean. The transportation is phenomenal. On time. You can set your watch to it.
People are going to have a bone to pick with that.
Well, this is coming from me, a Texan, but
true.
Honestly.
Our bar is really low. So you're like, oh, it's on time.
No, I loved it. I really enjoyed the vibe. I enjoyed seeing older people out and about living life. That's something that really struck my heart as beautiful. Because in Texas, the elderly, they stay at home. They stay indoors, especially if they're in like a wheelchair or any type of mobility device. And here there was couples that were like 80 years old walking hand in hand, and young couples with little bitty babies all bundled up in their carriers, not letting the weather or their age get in the way of their of their lives. And that I found extraordinary. Seeing not only the young and their children out in the cold, but the elderly group out and about enjoying life. It made me feel like it was just an opposite world of where I came from, where it almost seems like they want you on medicine. They push the medicines on you.
In the U.S.
In the U.S. There's really not a society. There's a lot of healthy people, don't get me wrong. But I did notice that the doctors, it's not one or two medicines that they want you on. They want you on several medicines. And when I came over here, then I decided this is what I want to do. I want to come to Europe more often. At that point, I wasn't thinking of living here. I thought I want to come visit Paulina more often. I want to live a better life, a healthier life. And that was the beginning of my journey into changing the way that I ate and my attitudes towards food and my attitude towards getting out and walking and breathing, clean air. Just, it wasn't a pavement city like in Austin or Houston, where in the cities there's very little grass or greenery, and it's more like cement and sidewalks and freeways and cars everywhere. This was a different life. So many people out and about walking, especially at night, which I found beautiful. That's something too that's very much so the way of life in Spain. And here in Germany, you taught me about the digestive walk.
Verdauungsspaziergang. I love it.
Correct.
It means the digestion walk. To walk to digest your food after you eat dinner.
So when Paulina went to Austin and talked to me about that, and after eating that they'd go out and walk, I said, really?
After dinner?
And I said,
what?
After dinner? She said, yeah, Mama. Like, what do you usually do after dinner? I said, sit on the sofa and watch TV.
Yeah.
So I thought that's odd.
Yeah.
But what I learned, what I thought was odd, turned out to be something magnificent and something that I'm doing now with much joy. Yeah, switching over to Spain. Spain is a beautiful city. Alicante, where the weather is, it's hard to describe. Besides calling it paradise, the weather is consistent. That's the best way to put it. It's not as hot as Texas, and it's not cold like in Germany or other places. And I think they have 2 months of winter.
Yeah. But yeah, to give it some context, today we were looking at the weather, and in Celsius, it's like 16, 17 degrees with sunshine the next 10 days.
It
in
looked
January.
glorious in the window. Yeah.
Amazing.
We were in Paulina's and Tim's kitchen, and it was so funny because the sun was shining, but we knew it was cold outside. And the sun was shining, and we all just looked at each other like, hey, let's get out and do something. And I loved it that I was thinking like that too, even though it was cold. Let's get out there and enjoy this coldness. And then Paulina showed us her phone, and she said, yeah, Mama, because the next 10 days, there's going to be no sun. And I said, oh, we got to go out then. We got to get out and get into that sun. And then Tim said something hysterical like, yeah, MJ, but you're going to be in Alicante tomorrow. That
doesn't apply to you.
Yeah, it doesn't apply to you. And, yeah, sometimes I feel a little bit guilty about that, like that I'm in such a beautiful place and enjoying life so much. And, my Paulina and Tim here in the cold, but that's their life.
It's a different lifestyle.
And my friends back home in the heat and not on the beach, and that's their life. And I'm trying to accept this beautiful blessing with much gratitude. It's like a dream. It really is.
But how did you end up now living in Spain? What are you doing there? What kind of visa did you get?
I had to apply for a student visa.
But prior to that, you had to get something, right? To get a student visa.
Well, in order to apply for a student visa, that was the only visa I could apply for under the umbrella of the student visa, is to become an au pair or to be a volunteer for a foundation.
I think an au pair is another one.
It's under the student visa umbrella.
I'm not sure about that, but the student visa, I know for sure, includes volunteer positions.
Right.
And when we found that out, and that there's no age limit for volunteering in Spain, like that just opened up everything.
The only thing with that is that you need to make sure that it's with a foundation that's going to give the consulate and the government all the appropriate documents, and they require a lot to prove that it's a legit foundation. Their tax forms, the person who interviewed me and I got the job from, that I had to give them her DNI, her residency number, to her personally to prove that she is a person who is legit and works for them.
But let's backtrack a little. How did you go about finding the volunteer position that you have right now?
Paulina and I discussed that, and I made a list of 25 foundations. And the first foundation was Caritas. It's very well known. And I contacted them, sent in my resume, sent in a picture of me at the beach, and I told them I had fallen in love with their beautiful city and I wanted to volunteer for their foundation if there was any positions available for me. And they contacted me and said, wow, we would love for you to come volunteer with us, but we just don't have the proper documentation that's needed. And I quickly called Paulina, bawling and telling her, they said no, Paulina. She said, Mom, how many places have you contacted? I said, one. And she said, oh, Mom. And then the second group is Fundación Iniciativa Social, and they accepted me. But before that, I had to go through a 1-hour interview, totally in Spanish, at 6:00 in the morning in Texas.
Yeah,
and I was quite nervous. She said, "We're going to interview you," and I thought it might be like 10, 15 minutes for this volunteer job. No, it was 58 minutes because I was keeping an eye on the time. And it was in Spanish. And let me explain a little bit about that. I grew up with Spanish-speaking parents. I spoke Spanish more when I was younger. When I was in grade school, I got paddled 3 times very hard for speaking Spanish in class, asking a friend for a pencil in Spanish.
5 minutes from the border.
Yeah, 5 minutes. And because they were very, I'm just going to say it, they were racist and sometimes still are, in that matter of white versus brown. And so I got paddled, and my mom worked for the school. And when we got home that day, she said, that's it. No more speaking Spanish in this household. Everybody's going to excel in their English language and grammar. And she said a few other things that I cannot repeat on here, but she said, that's it. And so we did not speak Spanish a lot at home.
There's no filters here. If you're comfortable,
now she tells me.
If you're comfortable sharing.
Now she fucking tells me. I'm just joking. So we grew up mostly speaking English and listening to my parents and their friends speak Spanish. When I got married, my husband did not speak Spanish regularly, but no Spanish. And I would from time to time with my childhood friends, but it wasn't appropriate Spanish. It was more Tex-Mex.
A lot of slang.
A lot of, combination of English and Spanish, a mix that we call Tex-Mex. And so, when I was interviewed in Spanish and had not spoken Spanish fluently for perhaps 45, 50 years, and now I was going to be interviewed by somebody from Spain, I was shaking in my boots. And I prayed before this interview because I really wanted to move to Spain. I said, I've just got to do well in this interview today. And I said a few things that made them laugh, and they loved that, and it helped me relax.
Lighten the mood.
It helped me relax too. And at the end, she tells me, well, we think you're a lovely lady, and we would just be honored for you to be a volunteer for us. I thought I was going to burst out crying at that moment, but I controlled myself. And then I said, is there anything else I need to know? And she said, yes, we'll be sending you a training packet, which was not easy either. A training packet that you'll need to do online and then get back to us right away. And then we'll be in touch with you. And it almost felt like a dream. But once I hung up on the phone, I quickly called Paulina and my two other children and told them, they said yes. They said yes. They want me. And that was the beginning of my journey.
Part one, having an offer.
Yes, I had the offer. And then, oh my God, getting the paperwork for the visa.
A whole other story, right?
That's how my hair got white. The application for the visa and all the documentation. I sold my car. I sold a lot of my furnishings. That wasn't easy either, to be honest with you. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, but it was quite big. It was 1,200 square feet. And so I sold my favorite beautiful bed frame and antiques and gave stuff away with all my heart. And because I needed to let go in order to receive. That's the way I looked at it. And that's something really important in life that I suggest to all of you, whether you're moving abroad or staying right where you're at. Try to focus what you have around you. Be grateful for it. And don't be afraid to let it go. Because you'll never know what's going to come back in that place, that opening that you're making. So during these times that I was downsizing, it was 3 times at the storage unit that I went from a 10 by 15 to a 10 by 10 to a 10 by 5 to a 5 by 5. It was 4 times. And every time it was easier. The first time I was crying. The second time, it wasn't really easy because then it seemed like every time I was downsizing, it's hard to explain, but it felt a little bit more satisfying and I felt more free. But at the same time, it was harder and harder because now all the favorite little things that meant so much to me, then I had to pick and choose from those as to what I was going to get rid of. So then I came up with a little mantra. And I said, I would say something to the effect of, thank you so much for the joy that you've given to me. And now I know somebody else will find much joy in you. And I know that may sound silly, but it has a lot to do with your heart and your mind and a good attitude and great energy. Releasing that item to others with great energy does make a difference, because I gave away the children's the children's things that they had for Christmas, like their rocking horse that we would put in front of the Christmas tree, that played a little a little sound that meant the world to me, and I moved it from place to place that we moved, and fond memories of that. And then at one time, I had one of these monkeys that with a Velcro on the hands that you wrap around things. And then I put it on that rocking horse, and I put it on backwards, tied onto the horse, and the kids would laugh about that. And so it was hard getting rid of these certain things that meant the world to me. I asked the kids, do you want my china? I had some elegant, antique, pristine condition china, and nobody wanted it. And there was no time to sell it. And I didn't want to just give it away to Goodwill. Does that sound silly? I gave so much away to Goodwill, but there's certain things that I wanted to give away to special people. So that went to an incredible couple that Paulina's friends with, Mark and Irene, and they're a young couple like Paulina and Tim. And so I gave that away to them with a lot of love. So it's just stuff like that. Towards the end, it was getting hard, but can you imagine this? It's December 2024. In May, I went back to Texas to empty out that 5x5. I have no stuff in storage. I have maybe 3 boxes at my brother's home in the Rio Grande Valley. Thanks, Nat. My brother Eddie. And then the rest of the stuff went to the kids, the things that you guys wanted. So moving abroad consists of many things. Not only the difficult process in your visa, not only the financial aspect of it, but also the mental state of your being. And when I say mental state of your being, moving abroad affects you in many different ways. You have to let go of the past. You've got to let go of the material stuff. You've got to let go of the culture that surrounds you, that's embraced you all of your life like a blanket of comfort. It's like you're taking your hard shell off. You're exposing yourself, but it's so worth it. You grow another shell. You grow. You get stronger. It makes you stronger. It rebuilds you. It makes you better moving abroad. That's the way I feel.
Luckily, you don't have to completely let go of your culture, I think.
No.
You can still hold on to bits of who you are.
Well, when I meant let go of my culture, I meant like living in Texas and the Tex-Mex food around you always, and the Mexican people around you. And like Austin is a melting pot in Texas, and there's people from all over the world that live in Austin, but there's a big community of people from even from the bottom of Texas, my area, the Rio Grande Valley, that live in Austin. So when you come here, there's not your, oh, I'm going to go to this side of town because that's where the Mexican Americans live. You're in Spain now, baby, and you've got to adjust. And there's people from all over the world, and that's a beautiful thing. It's like you take off your blanket of security, but yet you create a new one, almost like in patches, like a patchwork quilt. And you start creating these different parts of this comfort around you from beautiful, different people from different countries, the people that I've met that have touched my life. Giovi from Ecuador, Marco from Italy, Jen Garcia she's from Spain, but she's also lived in London most of her life. Yolanda from Granada, España, and you start to meet different people from different parts of the world, Rasim Sin, and it's just a multicultural, beautiful life. So you try to keep in your heart who you are, where you came from, and never forget that. But you also are so excited to build upon that and learn who you are. Because it is a learning experience coming to a different country. Things aren't done the way you're used to it. So it's a beautiful experience that I really highly suggest to everybody, even if it is 30 days, even if you don't move over here permanently. Come for 30 days. There's a 90-day, not a visa, but what
like
is
tourist
a tourist
agreement
a 90-day
for Americans.
tourist travel visa that you can get for 90 days. Explore the world, save your money, give yourself that gift. Not everybody is meant to move abroad, but you certainly have the capacity to come visit and explore.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think life in Alicante, Spain does better than life in Austin, Texas?
I would have to say the mentality, the way they think. And by that, I mean the way that they eat. It's a Mediterranean diet, the way that they eat 5 times a day. 5. And it doesn't mean that they eat immense amounts 5 times a day. No, they eat the right foods at 5 different times a day. They get out and walk a lot. They're healthy. They're happy. They're in the community a lot. They're not at home behind closed doors where sadness can creep up upon you, illnesses. They're always up for an adventure. They love to communicate. They love to travel. They love to go out and meet people every day, and that's
Go out. They have a culture of going out.
They go out.
Right? Even at night, they go out.
Can I share something with you?
Yeah.
I had never, ever been to a club, a club by myself. So when I came here for the first 5 weeks, the first time I came, that you discovered Alicante for me, my brother Joe said, "Hey, MJ, the World Cup is playing, and Spain is in the World Cup, and you've got to go to the bar and watch the game."
Oh, a bar, not a club.
No, well,
a bar.
A bar, sorry.
They're different.
Well, a bar. I'd never been to a bar or a club at 59 alone. And so my brother encouraged me, and I said, "When are they playing?" He said, tonight, like, you need to leave like in 3 hours. Tonight. And I was just like, wow, I needed to prepare mentally for this, and I didn't think I could do it. And he said, "You got to do it. You got to go amongst the locals." Well, I put my boots on, figuratively, pulled up my boots, tightened my belt, and I told Giovi and Marco, I asked him, would you guys like to go? Because a little bit of me was still worried about that. I said, "Would you guys like to go to a bar with me to go watch the game tonight?" They said, "Oh, no, we're okay. We're going to..." They always go out. But this night in particular, they were going to stay home, which was odd. I guess it was just meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, "Oh, okay." And I thought, and I went back to my room and I thought for a split second, maybe I'll watch it on TV and stay here with Giovi and Marco. And then the adventurous side of me said, "Oh, hell no. Come on, you can do this." And I remembered my brother's sound and his voice, like, "MJ, you just got to be around the locals watching this game." So I went. Oh, and I had also asked Giovi and Marco. I asked Giovi,
The Airbnb host.
the Airbnb host, I said, is it safe? Is it safe for me as an older woman to be walking around the street because the game's going to finish around 10:30 at night?
And we don't do that in Texas.
No, and I'm going to have to walk there and walk back. And it was a distance, but I was looking forward to walking that distance, which I never did in Texas. And so, yeah, she said, absolutely. And if you get lost, somebody will help you. And I said, okay. So I was ready. I went to the bar and I got there early to make sure I had a place to sit. And I went up to the bar and I asked the bartender, I said, "Hey, I'm going to be here alone. Do you think that's okay?" And he said, "Yeah, absolutely." He tells me in Spanish. And so then he set me up with extra snacks. And yeah, I enjoyed a beer before the game. And then it started to get really packed and rowdy. And before I knew it, I was leaping out of my seat and yeah, and it was just so much fun. I took pictures. We had a great time. I did an Instagram post on it. It felt liberating. It felt liberating not only to get out and do this by myself, but to experience something like this. And my brother was absolutely right. And it's something I'll always treasure. Yeah, it was wonderful. But this whole experience of moving abroad is changing me in positive ways I never even dreamed of before. It didn't even cross my mind. In Texas, in Austin, or in the Rio Grande Valley, I'd always like go out with a friend or not, or I wouldn't go out. And that's something that concerned my kids. "Mama, you need to get out. Mama, get out and do things. You're in Austin." And I wouldn't do things unless a friend would do it with me.
Yeah.
And here, I'm not waiting for anybody.
Love that.
I'm not waiting for anybody. And if you're interested in joining my adventure, keep up with me, baby, because this grandma moves. I'm not a grandma, but I'm very grateful for motion. And that's why, getting back briefly to my recovery, where they didn't think I was going to walk again. And now I'm walking in Alicante with much joy. And I'm going on excursions by myself where you pay very little, like 30 euros for a whole day, and they take you in a fancy bus and take you to a castle or take you to a botanical garden.
Wine tasting.
All these adventures. I'm not waiting for somebody to say, "Hey, MJ, would you like to go out with me?" No, I'm taking myself out and truly enjoying life.
Love that. So with all like the sparkling energy and good vibes from Alicante, that's one side. But what do you miss the most about life in the US or in Austin? One thing that you're just like, oh, man, I miss that.
My car.
Yeah.
I loved that car, but of course I needed to get rid of everything in order to make this move. But I do miss having a car. But honestly, I love not having insurance payment. Here they pay, I think in insurance, they pay like, I was told like 300 euros for a year for car insurance. And back in the US, it was like possibly 175 a month just for the car insurance. And so I would say it's a vehicle, but And not really, because the way I'm enjoying movement, I
In a different
love
way.
using the tram. I love going on the tram. I love going on the bus. And I buy a tram card for €2. I put 30 rides on it, and it comes out to 40 centimos a ride, which is like 42 cents American money a ride. But if you don't have that tram card and buy that type of package, it's €1.40 per ride. So now I find myself on the tram telling strangers that are like buying a ticket on the tram, and I'll say, pardon me, I said, do you realize that if you buy this card, if you go to any area at the trams, and if you buy this card and buy a package of like 8 rides or 10 or 30, that you won't be paying $1 for €140? And they're like so excited, and a little
Look at
part
you
of me
giving advice.
yeah. And so I love it, because now even when people come up to me and say, can you tell me where this is at? And I said, oh yeah, you go here, here, here. And it just gives me much joy to feel like an Alicantina. That's what they're
Love
called
it.
here, Alicantinos.
My last question to kind of wrap up this episode would be, what advice would you have to give to someone who's curious about leaving their home country for the first time, maybe to travel or possibly live a life abroad?
Well, to travel, I would say as an American, it's really important to be safe, but do not let fear control you. I think sometimes when we let fear control us, we lose so much in life. And so when traveling to Europe, of course, be conscientious of where you're going and what's around, but let your wings spread. Try to expand your horizons beyond your own thinking, because I think sometimes we are the ones that hold ourselves back the most. And when it comes to moving abroad, I would say pick a city that's going to be more to your liking. Of course, if you want to be near a beach, then the Costa Blanca. If you want to be in a more contemporary type of place with a lot of museums, maybe Valencia. If it's for business, perhaps Madrid, and I'm talking just about Spain. But think about who you are, but don't forget to expand on who you can be.
I love that. Thank you so, so much, Mom.
Thank you.
Yeah, for this episode and getting to, dive a bit into your life right now in Spain. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
Thank you very much for all
cheers
that
to
you
that,
did.
Mama. Let's do a
Thank you
little
for all that you
cheers.
did for me to be here, to Paulina and my beautiful sons, for all their love and kindness, and to allowing my dreams not only to flourish, but to allowing me to fly.
Oh, chin chin.
Cheers.
Love you so much,
Cheers.
Mom.
Love you, darling.
This rosé is great, and it's still fresh. But with that, I will then close this episode of The Pod Abroad. My name is Paulina de los Santos, and we were here with my mom, MJ, Mary Jane. Thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you next episode. The Pod Abroad's video, audio, and music is produced and edited by Tim Teherne. Make sure to give us a follow and leave a comment if you like this episode.